Now, that was a lot about screen sizes and orientations and adjusting to changes in those sizes and orientations. And as mentioned before, definitely play around with those different tools to learn more about how they work and to optimize the UI for your personal preferences. What I want to do here is I now want to move away from adjusting to sizes and instead adjust to platforms, because that is also quite interesting. Now for this, I'm back here on Android and iOS, portrait mode, but now let's say there are certain elements that should look different on the two platforms. To be honest here, I like the style, I like the similar style for both platforms, and it is one of the advantages React Native offers that we can write one codebase and target multiple platforms. But sometimes you want slightly different styles for different platforms, and React Native also gives you tools for this case. Now for that, let's say that in here, we wanted to change this title based on the platform we're running on. On Android, we might want to keep it like this, but maybe on iOS, we want to get rid of the border. How can we do that? Well, we go to the title, and now we want to adjust the styles based on the underlying platform. For this, React Native gives us another API we can use, the Platform API. The Platform API allows us to detect on which platform we're running. Now, we don't need to set up a dynamic listener here because the platform is not going to change whilst the app is running, unlike the dimensions. Instead, it is always the same for the entire lifetime of this app, so we can use this Platform API anywhere and we don't need to react to any changes. And if we would want to get rid of the border, we could say here for border width, instead of always setting this to 2, we use the Platform API. And then on that Platform API, we can access OS, this OS property, which is actually a string that's equal to Android, iOS, or since you theoretically could also build desktop apps or web apps with React Native, macOS, Windows, and web. But we will focus on Android and iOS in this course. And if I only want to set a border width on Android, then I check if this is equal to Android, and then I set a border width of 2, otherwise of 0. With that, you see the border is gone on iOS, but it's still there on Android. And that's how easy it is to use that Platform API. But when it comes to working with the Platform API, there also are other ways of using it. You can use it in a ternary expression like this, and there's nothing wrong with it. This is short and easy to read. But there also is an alternative way of using it. You can use the Platform API object here and use the built-in select method. Now select wants an object as a parameter value, and in this object you should specify an iOS property and an Android property. And then you can set different values that will eventually be returned by select for these different platforms. So here I could then set 0 for iOS and 2 for Android. So that's simply a different way of writing such a conditional statement. In a place where you want a value that should be different for iOS or Android, you can use platform select to define the iOS and the Android values, and then select will return the appropriate value in its place based on the platform on which this code is executed. So with that, we achieve the same result as before, but this is maybe a bit more readable, or it's simply an alternative that you should also know. Now, another alternative, which I also want to show you, which can be very useful when writing platform-specific code, is to write platform-specific files. Now, up to this point, we always added component files like this, which had a component name and ended with .js, and that's the default. But you can actually also write platform-specific component files, or code files in general. For example, if I want to write an Android-specific title component version, I can copy this and name this file title.android.js. And then I could name the other component title.ios.js. Now, you don't need to adjust your imports. In the places where title gets used, you should make sure that you don't have .ios or .android at the end. And since my IDE added the .ios extension automatically here, I removed it. And you want to make sure you remove that on all the screens where the title is used, because you still import as if the file would just be named title.js, and under the hood React Native will pick the proper file based on the platform on which you're running. And so now we could go to title.android and get rid of the platform API usage here and just set border width to 2 here, because we know that this file with these style settings will only be executed for Android. And on the other hand, on title iOS.js, we can also get rid of that code and always set border width to 0, or simply get rid of all the border settings altogether since we want no border. Now, it might be overkill here for the title, where this simple switch was actually enough to achieve the desired result, but it is a feature you must know. And therefore, here I'm showing this to you by building the same component twice in different files with different file endings with slightly different styles. And with that, if we reload everything, we still get the different styles as before, but now we achieve this with help of platform-specific files. And you're not limited to component files. You could also be importing from other files, like maybe different colors files, where one file defines the colors for Android and one file defines the colors for iOS. Then you would just add the different extensions here, and you would make sure that you always import from just colors, so you don't include the extension here in the import statements. And then React Native would pick the different files for the different platforms, and you could easily set up different color palettes with a trick like this. And actually, why don't we give this a quick try? If I add colors.android.js here, and then colors.ios.js, we have to make sure that in all the places where we import colors, we don't have .ios at the end. So we want to make sure that we search for all the imports and we never have colors.ios or colors.android here, but always just colors. That's really important. So we want to search all those imports and get rid of these extensions here, which is what I'm doing here, so that ultimately we can then set up different color palettes for the different platforms. So now with all those imports adjusted, we could say that for Android, maybe this primary color here should be green. And this accent color should maybe be this color here. Now that's probably ugly, but we can see that it's only used on Android and not on iOS. Now I will actually revert this because here I was happy with my colors on both platforms, and therefore here of course we don't need those different platform files. But it is worth noting that this feature exists, that it's not exclusive to components, and that you can use this feature to define different components, different styles, different colors, and different code in general for the different platforms.